بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, today we're going to talk about a summary of some of the surahs, inshallah. Hopefully it will be plea for us on Judgment Day, not against us, and may Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who listen to speech and follow the best of it. Ameen. For the beginning, we'll talk about Surah Ar-Ra'd, the thunder. Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala called it that for the simple fact that this beautiful, magnificent creation of Allah Subhaanahu Jalla fi'ula took something that Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala created. In itself there is a mercy and punishment. Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala made the clouds, made in it the water, which is a source of life, and in it also is that thunder. It is a source of fear and also destruction. Subhanallah. And that's one of the reasons the scholar says that was the reason that was called that surah, that chapter, because of the Ra'd. Sabab al-Nuzul. Why? It is narrated that Anas radiallahu anhu said the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has given a command to a man to go call one of the tyrants among the Arabs. And he told him, Ya Rasulullah, this man is a tyrant. He says, go id'u, bring him to me. He says, okay, it's a command, so he goes. So he goes to that tyrant among the Arabs. He says, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is asking you for you to come to meet him. He says, "Akhbirni an Muhammad." Tell me about Muhammad ﷺ. Is he made of gold, silver? What is he made of? So he received the message loud and clear that he wasn't going to abide. He goes back to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and he says, didn't I tell you that he was a tyrant? He says, go back and tell him the same thing. So he goes back in the obedience of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and we don't have enough time to go into the obedience and all that, but just the summary of the surah. He goes back to that same tyrant, and he told him the same thing. At the man he was trying to make a mockery and so on, Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala sent that thunder, and it actually scared him off. And that's one of the reasons that the ayah, that the verses were actually revealed. In that beautiful surah, Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala, it is a Makki surah. Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala talked about 4 specific items. Al-Wahdaniyya, meaning the monotheism of the Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala, believing in Allah Subhaanahu Jalla fi'ula, and Al-Ba'th wal punishment, Ba'th, resurrection, and Jaza, and the reckoning. When Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala revealed these beautiful verses, even the mushrikeen denied it, even though the clear light of the proofs of Allah Subhaanahu Jalla fi'ula existence, they still did not believe. Jahadu, they disbelieved in it. So Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala relayed after this the proofs of His creation, about the heavens and the earth, about the moon and the sun, about the water and the plantation and so on. And after this He gave 2 examples about the truth and falsehood. The simple fact that Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam about this beautiful water that comes down in the valleys and the trenches, that it takes with them the good and the bad, meaning it actually benefits people by the blessing of Allah that He put life in the water. And in that same life cycle, the water carries only ghutha. On top of it, there's either bubbles in one interpretation that carries no weight. It has no significance. It has no power of anybody else. Or it actually carries anything that floats on top of the water, meaning some haze. That means it carries, again, no influence, no effect on people. In the other example Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala has given in that beautiful chapter of Ar-Ra'd, Surah Ar-Ra'd, is the metals, of how it is that Allah Subhaanahu wa ta'ala uses benefit in it. That from a solid metal, when it's put into when it's purified from the actual that you cannot use, for example, from the metal in itself, when it's it's purified and it's done under a high flame, you can take from it what's good that you can benefit from. You can use it into pots, because I'm fasting, I'm making food. You can use it in pots and so on. And the rest, that you throw it out. You don't need it anymore. So as such, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us a message, and akhi and ukhti, and that's what I'm going to close with. Which one are you? Are you the one that actually benefits people or harms people? Which one are you? Are you the water that source of life comes from? The life of giving da'wah, the life of giving people on the straight path? Or are you the one that goes against those who believe and disbelieve? Are you the one that carries weight, or are you the one that is carried that has no weight? Are you the one that actually come from the darkness to light, or are you the one that actually tried to put out the light? And even then, akhi and ukhti, we have to understand that the power of Allah Subhanahu Jalla fi'ula and the light of Allah cannot be put out. So choose the right one. Be among those who ask people to the path of Allah, and be a beneficial person to yourself and the people around you. Now with Surah Ibrahim alayhi salam. It was called Surah Ibrahim alayhi salam takhleedan, meaning to eternally remember Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abul Anbiya, the father of all prophets and messengers. And it is recited till Judgment Day from the seventh heaven. Subhanallah. Ibrahim kana ummah. Allahu Akbar. He was an ummah on his own, meaning completed, fulfilled everything. Subhanallah. And the surah is Makkiyah. And if you notice, brothers and sisters, that the surah Makkiyah has a similar connotation of the Tawheed. Because for the first 13 years, Prophet Muhammad had one message. قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تَفْلَحُوا. Say there's only one Lord, you may prosper. So again, the surah talked about the aqidah, our belief system. And again, the aqidah comes from uqd, the knot, which is the strongest part of iman. Believing in the 6 articles of faith, believing in Allah Subhanahu Jalla fi'ula, the prophets and messengers, the divine scriptures, the qada and qadar, the decree, divine decree, the judgment day, and all of these things, subhanallah. So it talked about the aqidah. And it also talked about prophets and messengers before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it gave him an example about Musa alayhi salam, talked about what happened to him and what people in his time and the difficulties, and gave examples of those who believed and examples of those who did not believe. So which one are you again, akhi? I'm going to be asking you these questions just to raise a red flag, to ask yourself, at least be honest about the answer. Which one are you going to be? Those who Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will say that you are among those who are happy eternally, or those waliyadu billah use an example that eternally waliyadu billah going into difficulties? And with this, akhi and ukhti, thinking about Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's message, because that's what the ayah concentrate on, the risala and rusul, the message of Allah Subhanahu Jalla fi'ula, and those who carry the message of Allah Subhanahu Jalla fi'ula. Point: I want you to be a carrier of a message. How do you do that? Lead by example. Live Qur'an and Sunnah. Be a walking Qur'an like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Aisha radiallahu anha and Ummat al-Mu'minin ajma'in, when she was asked how was he, he says he was a walking Qur'an. So are you a walking Qur'an, or are you a walking shaitan? Subhanallah. So now I want you to be a key that opens the gates of good, that closes the gates of evil, enjoins good and forbids evil. And that's what it is, akhi and ukhti. So maybe we can walk in the footsteps of prophets and messengers. We can carry their message, inshaAllah, because there is no prophet and messenger after all. It is the burden is on us, akhi and ukhti, the Ummah Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to carry this da'wah, this propagation forth. I ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to make us among them, those who carry the torch after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, walk in his footsteps so we can meet him in Jannah. Ameen, inshaAllah Rabbil Alameen. And now let's talk about Surah Al-Hijr. The surah was called Al-Hijr because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala talked about that place, Hijr, from Ahl Salih, the people of Salih alayhi salam, which were the Thamud. And they were very strong, but really let's concentrate on that Tasmiyah for now, the calling it. It is between Ash-Sham and Medina, and they used to live there in that area, and that was a place that, waliyadu billah, that they were very strong. They used to actually carve from the mountains areas that they can live in. Very strong. They thought they were eternally going to live. They're not going to die. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala made him to be an example of it, and that's the reason of the tasmiyah. In that surah, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentioned something. رُبَّمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Subhanallah. Maybe those who disbelieved, meaning in the tafsir, on that day, in the hellfire, on Judgment Day, that maybe I wish that I was a Muslim. I wish that I only said La ilaha illallah. Why? Because they will come out of the hellfire one day. Otherwise, they're eternally there. So they said even those Muslims that they disobeyed, but they still had the Tawheed. Again, the surah is Makkiyah, and you'll see the trend that is about Tawheed, monotheism, oneness of Allah, believing in Allah, Aqeedah, all these things, the resurrection, reward and punishment, all of that was there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned of wa'd and wa'id, meaning promise of Jannah and fear of the hellfire. And then they said that day, maybe I wish that I just said La ilaha illallah. And even if I was disobedient, I'm not asking you to be disobedient and gives you a green light to go ahead and do that. I'm just saying, even then on that day, you wish you'd at least said La ilaha illallah so you'd come out of the hellfire one day, akhi. One day, ukhti. So live and die by La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And nothing is more than that. Nothing is more important. Nothing is heavier on the scale than the shahada. So on Judgment Day, when you hear a caller say, what would you give to stay away from the hellfire? What would you give to go to heaven? He says, I would give anything. رُبَّمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ الْمُجْرِمُ يَوَئِذٍ يَفْتَدِي. That criminals who would wish to do what? Sacrifice everything in their whole life. Their money they worked so hard for. Their family, their tribe, anything, their business. They would give it up just to stay away from the hellfire and go to heaven. On Judgment Day, he said, I asked of you less than that, to say, أَن تَقُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. All we asked of you is to believe there's only one God. فَأَبَيْتُمْ. Rasulullah ﷺ says everyone is in Jannah, except those who refuse. Everybody isn't going to heaven except those who refuse. Who refuses, Ya Rasulullah? Who? He says, everyone that obeyed me will go to Jannah. Those who refuse, those who disobey me refuse to go to Jannah. How could you, akhi and ukhti? How could you refuse an invitation to Jannah? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you example of those who are going to hellfire and what's the punishment, وَلِيَادَ بِاللَّهِ, and those who will go to heaven and what's the reward. And all the prophets and messengers come from the same source. And it goes to Surah Shaykh Nuh alayhi salam, how it started, and the seal of the prophets and messengers, to give Prophet Muhammad strength that the difficulties he's going through, the prophets and messengers before you had gone through. So just in case, we're finishing off in this surah, in the difficulties you go through in this da'wah, akhi and ukhti, remember prophets and messengers, and hold on. Don't say, I can't take the heat out of the kitchen. Stay in the kitchen, man. Again, I'm going back to food. This must be like a hunger theme here when fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who carry it. Inshallah, remember again, the prophets and messengers come from the same source. Follow their footsteps again. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those humal, those who carry the torch, inshallah. And now a summary about Surah Al-Nahl, the bee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that surah was called Al-Nahl because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to give us a glimpse of the magnificent creation of Allah. The bee in itself, that how it goes around the world, takes from the flowers and it gives you something that is gives you shifa, subhanallah. And if you've seen the Discovery channels or all the documentaries about the creation of the bees, amazing in itself, subhanallah. And that is a reason that it was asbab al-nuzul. The reason of a revelation, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma says that when Prophet Muhammad received اقتربت الساعة, the time is come or is near. So, and then the mushrikeen, those disbelievers, they started to make a mockery of Prophet Muhammad says, hold off, don't do anything. And they went back and says, we'll see what is he's scaring us with, and where is this punishment he's talking about. So they went to Prophet Muhammad and says, you know what, where is this thing that you're scaring us with? We don't see anything, we don't hear anything. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ata amrullah fala tasta'jiluh, in the past tense. The scholars will tell you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke in the past tense because the time can come anytime. Ata, past, it came already, that it will come. Ata amrullah fala tasta'jiluh, fa'at ta'qib, meaning right away. And in negation, do not be in haste, don't ask for it because you don't know what you're asking for. You can't handle it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah, now He's given him what? The clear signs that He's given you the hearing sense, the vision sense, whims and limbs and desires to be able to understand and look and ponder in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Surah Makkiyah, again it talks about the wahdaniyah, talks about the ba'th and nushur and everything that they actually lied upon or they did not believe. And it talks about the examples of which one? To give again Prophet Muhammad a path to follow and us to follow again. And the beauty about it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the equipment, akhi and ukhti. And that's what I'm finishing with, inshallah. The hearing sense, the vision, the whims and limbs and desires to be able to do what? If you go back in the Qur'an, يفسر بعضه بعضا. The Qur'an does the tafsir for in itself. He says, هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا? Wasn't there a time for the human being was not called, meaning or known or discovered or called anything? Because at the time of Adam, before the creation of Adam alayhi salam. Then إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه. We've created you from a drop, a clot, a mudgha, something insignificant, subhanallah. Why? نبتليه, to test you. فجعلنا, again فات تعقيب, فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا. So we've given you the hearing sense and the vision sense. So akhi, from here on in and ukhti, inshallah, We are going to use these senses for the sake of Allah, not against Allah Subhaanahu Jalla fi'ula. To ponder and reflect about the creation of Allah, to believe, to increase our iman, believe in Him. So from now on, here you go. Your eyes are camera lenses. Your ears and mouth is your MP3. Mind is your modem, your heart is your hard drive. Everything you see, hear and touch is counted down. You're downloading, right? But it will be uploaded on Judgment Day. So ask yourself, will you be happy or pleased or proud of this DVD that you cannot hide from your parents? You can't put it in the closet because it will be seen on Usul Ashad, everyone on the discovery, on that Judgment Day, akhi and ukhti. So again, I ask Allah Subhaanahu wa Ta'ala to make us among those who follow the best of it. Wa akhir da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu alayhi wa sahbihi wa tabi'in. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.